So, does anyone else feel weird about how romance is treated and depicted in media? Because I know I do. Close friends and family can find my company difficult when watching films because, like, 70% of the time when there's a romance, I'm just not convinced or invested in the relationships being portrayed. And for a brief time, it made me wonder, do I just not care for romance as a genre, or is there something inherently wrong with me? And my answer is no. I have done nothing wrong ever in my life. But I realized it's not because I'm against romance as a genre, but rather how romance is treated as an almost mandatory part of all storytelling. Not all writers are good at or even interested in writing romance, and not all stories are improved by having a romantic plotline hastily tacked onto an otherwise interesting narrative. My problem stems from when romance is treated as some sort of obligation that the writer must include in the story, which is absurd, because you know what happens when a writer is bad at writing romance? You get a bad romance. Kishimoto has gone on record that he does not enjoy and is not good at writing romance, and it shows. Even My Hero Academia seems to struggle with that feeling of obligation of having to include a romance but not knowing how to include it in any way that has any sort of lasting impact or character growth. If writers only include romance as an afterthought, then it's going to feel like an afterthought. And it's not going to be given enough time and development in the story that it needs to actually be a good romance. And, actually add something of substance to the story. Which is frustrating because women sometimes are only even included because there needs to be a romantic partner for one of the male characters. And this is still a modern problem. Like, I'm not talking about movies from the 50s or anything here. Like, Ratatouille? The 2007 Pixar film about the rat that wants to cook? It has a romantic subplot between, you guessed it, the male human lead and the one female named character in the movie. And like, it must have been a problem that was addressed during film production because she even calls the film out on it.
How many women do you see in this kitchen?
Well,
Only me. Why do you think that is? Because haute cuisine is an antiquated hierarchy built upon rules written by stupid old men. Rules designed to make it impossible for women to enter this world. But still I'm here. How did this happen?
I'm such a fast learner. You want to know why I'm such a great cook?
Ratatouille has 3 people credited for the original story concept, and they are also the director, screenwriter, and the co director. And they are all men. There are 2 women credited below them for quote unquote additional story material. And I would bet you anything that they were the ones who wrote Colette's speech. It's mind boggling because there's no reason they couldn't have included more female characters other than that the writers were male and they just didn't think to include women other than for the romantic lead. Hell, I mean, even Remy could have been written as a female rat. Like, it would have changed nothing about his character. Yes, I know, I'm talking about Ratatouille on a video that's supposed to be about anime. Look, all I'm saying is this isn't a resolved issue. It is still a problem today. But here's the thing, even when it's specifically marketed towards women, I also don't really care for the romance genre where the only plot is romance. Plain romance is honestly kind of boring, which is why so many romance anime are coupled with the comedy genre, because otherwise there's just not enough plot to carry a narrative, which isn't necessarily bad or shallow. For instance, Kaguya Love is War manages to successfully thread this needle by taking the romantic lead's absolute refusal to confess their love to absurd heights. And yet it also still manages to make its cast feel like real human teenagers that aren't just cardboard cutouts or archetypes, but have complex thoughts and history and have been through real trauma. And oh my god, I cannot believe this anime made me have feelings for one of its side characters of all the things! Ishigami is my boy! It also helps that the manga, and eventually when we get this season 3 adaptation, is going to have the romance actually progress And it's not going to be like Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, which I love, but there's no progression in the story at all. Which is fine for Nozaki because it's more of a parody than anything, but I just don't understand how many romance anime just drop the ball on this. Like, learn how to write a couple that is good when they finally end up together. It can't perpetually be about the yearning, you fools! No one can sustain 100 episodes of yearning! So, where does that frankly long-winded and tangential introduction leave me? If I don't like obligatory romance, and I don't like the romance genre, what do I want? Where does that leave me? Well, it leaves me with the desire to see a story with an interesting narrative, and long-term stakes and character progression, and also a believable slow burn romance that actually adds something to the characters and endears them to the audience. Basically, my ideal romance is Full Metal Alchemist, but since everyone on the planet has already seen Full Metal Alchemist, and if you haven't, what are you doing? Go watch Full Metal Alchemist. It leads me to the only logical conclusion, which is that supernatural romance slaps. Hey kids, are you tired of nothing of substance happening in your romance anime? Tired of humans and their weak teeth and sad little hands? Well, have I got the thing for you. Let me introduce you to supernatural romance. Oh, you think pining for your classmate from afar is hard because you're too nervous to confess your feelings? Wow, much wow, so hard. Well, good luck trying to confess your love to a being designated as a monstrous non-human where all of society deems your romance forbidden and unnatural and tries to separate you at all cost. Oh shit, this is a gay thing, isn't it? Okay, well, I'm not gonna unpack that right now. The point is, I have an unreasonable soft spot for supernatural romance, and Toilet Bound Hanako is one of my favorites right now. Let me clear the air about what I think has been a major point of confusion for a lot of potential Hanako fans. So, Hanako-san is a Japanese urban legend about a little ghost girl named Hanako who haunts the girls' school bathroom. And that's why the series is called Toilet Bound Hanako, because he's based off of a ghost haunting a toilet. It otherwise has nothing to do with toilet stuff. Hanako isn't even his real name, he's just the spirit filling in for the appointed role as the urban legend, Hanako-san, in this particular school. To really quickly summarize, Yashiro Nene ends up forming a contract with Hanako in order to grant her wish, and she repays him by working with him to rein in the other 7 wonders of the school, who recently have started running amok and causing havoc for the students. So, right off the bat, there's an actual plot with conflict and goals, and our cast is working together to achieve it. Excellent, good, great, I'm into it. But, is the romance actually any good? Who boy is it? Yashiro and Hanako's relationship is honestly one of the most convincing depictions of a first high school crush I've seen in a long time, and not even in a cringy way, and I am living for it! Yashiro's wish originally was to have the boy she was crushing on fall in love with her, even though she's not really in love with him, as they've never actually spoken, and she had already been rejected by another guy who she spent the previous year working up the courage to actually confess to him. She falls in and out of infatuation pretty quickly. I'm not really sure how to say this in a way that accurately conveys my meaning, but Yashiro really does just want to be loved by someone, and who that person is incidental. And let me be clear, I don't think that's a bad thing. Honestly, I think sometimes all it takes to fall in love with someone is for them to be in love with you, especially when you're that age. Granted, Yashiro is shallow sometimes, but that part of her is not treated as what makes her shallow, and I like that. As for Hanako's part, he loves to tease Yashiro, and he has a natural flirty affect that makes him very fun to watch. And maybe it's just because quarantine has made me so touch-starved, but every time I see Hanako hug or squish or poke Yashiro, I just get this little heart squeeze and my face just scrunches up reflexively. I wish more anime had this kind of natural skinship. It really sells a character's relationship. And plus, Hanako is a ghost, and Yashiro is the first human he's been able to touch in a long time, so of course he'd be initiating contact constantly. But if I'm honest, there's another reason why I adore Hanako, and it's kind of embarrassing. I, like many seasoned anime fans, have a certain character archetype that I am unreasonably fond of. And it's sort of become like a running joke between my close friends because honestly, I'm just so predictable at this point that it's kind of funny. But I love smiley assholes. I just love them. If you want to get real specific, my favorite type is smiley assholes that have an unwavering love for the protagonist. I'll name a couple of examples and you'll start to see a pattern quickly emerge. Yami Yugi, specifically from Season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Koga from Inuyasha, Kishi from Tokyo Mew Mew, obviously, Envy from Full Metal Alchemist, Bakugo. Unfortunately, no, I will not apologize. I am as God made me. If they smile and laugh a lot and are just generally vibing and having a great time and are probably at least a little evil or threatening, I'm just a fool. I fall for it every time. So basically, what I'm saying is Hanako's character type was like scientifically engineered in a lab to be and was expertly crafted to cater to my specific interests. Every time he's on screen, I'm just like, that's my boy! My beautiful magic boy! Plus, when you add onto it that Hanako's carefree facade is covering up for a deeper trauma, it's just, it's the good shit. This is the most subjective, biased video I've ever made in my life. Like, I can't critically analyze this, I'm just having a good time. So, Yashiro and Hanako's relationship is really compelling because I individually really like both of their characters, and I want to see them become closer friends and eventually fall in love. But at the same time, I know that their romance is doomed from the start. The way I feel about Hanako and Yashiro is the same way I feel about Orpheus and Eurydice. Because at the end of the day, Hanako is a ghost. He's already dead, and even the best possible outcome for these two is probably going to be a bittersweet one. I'm also intensely worried about Yashiro because the thing tying her to Hanako is a mermaid scale, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with another tale about a mermaid who was destined to have a tragic, unrealized love. I'm frankly really worried about that. But like Orpheus and Eurydice, when I watch a retelling of that tale, like in Hades Town, I still can't help but wishing that maybe things will work out this time. So, should you watch Hanako? Well, the short answer is yes. And then the long answer is yes, you should. And then you should go read the manga. Because I thought the anime was doing a pretty good job at exploring its characters and long term consequences and themes. But, I was wrong. So wrong. Oh my god, the manga is so good. I am suffering. If you remember what I said earlier about how I actually really like stakes and conflict to be in my romantic stories. Well, much to my surprise and delight, there are way more stakes than I ever could have imagined, and I am not okay. So, the anime, for its part, has the budget of like 2 paperclips and a piece of string. There's just not a lot of animation actually happening. It's more like they colored in the manga and then moved it around a bit. It actually reminds me of those animated like web comics more than an actual anime. However, I would still recommend watching it because the voice acting is really good and it really sells a lot of the emotion behind the dialogue.
もういいさよなら。ああ、嘘嘘。男の子の花子さんかっこいい。かっこいい。それじゃあお名前と願いをどうぞ。
こんなものにまで頼って自分のことばっかり。私自業自得だ。全部。
So, if nothing else, I can recommend it for that. Second of all, the manga is really beautiful. Like, really beautiful. Like, what the fuck? The character designs are so stylized that when I was watching the anime, I thought it meant that the artist didn't have a lot of skill. But reading the manga made me realize that their art is really heckin' good. Like, the hands are so good, and the expressions convey so much emotion And like the spirit worlds are so detailed and weird. One thing the anime did manage to adapt really well is that the artist has this very warm, graphic, rough coloring style. Like, everything is warm. The black is a warm black, the blues are warm, the greens are warm. Normally, as a rule in art, you want your shadows to be cool and your highlights to be warm, or even the other way around, but you wouldn't want to have all warm lights and shadows or all cool lights and shadows. But Ida Iro is really just like, fuck it, everything's warm. And that goes a long way into giving the anime a distinct visual identity. I'm sorry to pick on isekai again, but this is a problem with all anime in the last 10-ish years, but all the forests look exactly the same. Like, trying to pick out a forest from Bookworm or ReZero or the Slime anime, they all look the same. But you look at the school in Hanako and you're like, yes, that's Hanako's school. It has chunky hand-painted clouds and that thick geometry and warm shadows and a roughly painted surface and then like really bizarre small details that usually are in the windows. I never thought I could be so hungry for a distinct visual identity in an anime that I could be excited about windows, but here I am. But if all my praise is about the color palette, then how does that translate into the manga, which is grayscale? The manga has this really beautiful texture to it. There's a lot of movement conveyed through the texture and detail in the inking of characters' hair and clothing. Like, Yashiro's hair is so beautiful in like every shot of the manga. Like, it is fluid and moving and detailed, and she has these really delicate curls that frame her face, and that they just do not translate without a higher budget of animation. Toilet Bound Hanako-kun isn't quite a horror manga, it's firmly in supernatural, but when the manga chooses to, shall we say, dip its toes into horror, it's very effective. So here's the thing. Watch the anime, see what you think, and then go back and read the manga from the beginning. As of the current release date of this video, we still don't know if Hanako will be renewed for a second season. I'm guessing that the reason why they truncated some stuff and rearranged some of the events of the manga is because they weren't sure if they would get a second season and wanted to try and leave it on a somewhat satisfying note. And listen, even if you're like, I just watched the anime, I don't want to reread the manga, it's only chapter 23 where a major deviation happens out of like 74 chapters so far. It's worth rereading those chapters for small deviations, rearranged events, and honestly, better art. Plus, chapter 9 and 10 got completely cut from the anime adaptation despite being a crucial development. Again, I think they were saving it for season 2. Seriously, just read the manga from the start. You're going to miss something, even if you think you are. Just trust me on this for once. So yeah, I'm really enjoying / really suffering because of the Toilet Bound Hanako manga, and I want to make you also suffer because of the Toilet Bound Hanako manga. So yeah, real chill video this week. I just kind of rambled about I talked a long time about why I like the windows in Toilet Bound Hanako. That's what the anime industry has done to me. Let me know what your favorite trope of anime boys are, or anime girls. My favorite is the pink magical girls. all, all the time. I have a friend where their favorite anime trope is complete idiots, just 100% so stupid. And another one who really likes tough guys with a heart of gold. So, yeah. It is sort of like a curse, though, once you figure out, like, what types of characters you are drawn to. You start, like, looking back at your life and the media you consumed as, like, a child, and it starts to become really formative, and you're like, oh no. I sure hope this doesn't awaken anything within me. So yeah, that's it. Don't really have much to plug. All my links are in the description, Instagram, Tumblr, such and such. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo.